At this unexpected juncture in my life, I found myself grasping a mop and bucket, preparing to cleanse the floors of another's home. The divorce had left me in a whirlwind of emotions and financial strain, with bills mounting like relentless waves. Pride was a luxury I could no longer afford. Survival was the priority. When I stumbled upon a housekeeping position in a serene neighborhood, I seized it without hesitation, desperate for something steady, something to anchor my drifting life. The house itself was a spectacle of grandeur, its polished surfaces and high ceilings imposing a sense of awe or perhaps intimidation. It was a place where one might feel diminished, dwarfed by its immaculate, almost sterile elegance. Yet the income was a lifeline, and the work a welcome distraction from my own chaos. Daniel, the homeowner, was not the figure I had anticipated. He greeted me at the door, his presence understated, in a simple white shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. His eyes, though weary, held a kindness, his voice was a soft murmur, his handshake firm yet gentle. He seemed always to be elsewhere, his mind adrift in distant thoughts. He showed me around, his instructions simple. Just keep the living room, kitchen, and study tidy. Don't worry about upstairs. The first days were uneventful, our interactions minimal. I would arrive, perform my duties, and depart, leaving him to his solitude in the study where he'd sit with his laptop and a mug of coffee, which I'd later find still warm, but half empty. As I moved through the house, I began to notice the silent stories embedded in its objects. The dust-covered piano, the wine glasses untouched on the shelf, and a photograph in the hallway of a younger Daniel, arm in arm with a woman whose smile promised an eternity. These were not my stories to delve into, yet they whispered to me, stirring a silent curiosity about the man whose home I now tended. The stillness within those walls was palpable, as if the very house yearned for the echoes of happier times. Yet in its silence, there was never a sense of exclusion. He, the solitary figure who occupied the space, would acknowledge my efforts with a nod or a simple note left on the kitchen counter. One day, after I had unprompted brought order to a disarrayed cupboard, he gifted me a modest bouquet accompanied by a message that read, "I noticed, thank you." The gesture, so simple yet profound, caught me off guard. No one had expressed gratitude in such a touching manner since the end of my former life. Thus, I began to linger a bit longer in the mornings, relishing the quiet. I'd catch sight of him engrossed in a book on the back patio, or staring vacantly through the window, his gaze heavy with sorrow. There was a loneliness about him not born of solitude, but of loss of holding onto someone who was no longer there. I saw the same shadow in myself, especially when confronting my reflection. One afternoon, as he was leaving, he paused and said, "You're doing a great job," his voice earnest. "I mean it." His words, so genuine, brought a smile to my face, a smile not often summoned by compliments. He seemed poised to continue, but instead he simply nodded and stepped out into the world beyond. That fleeting exchange lingered in my thoughts longer than it should have. At night, my mind wandered to him not in a romantic sense, at least not yet, but with a restless curiosity. Who was this man really? What stories did the walls of this house hold before my arrival? Why did time seem to stand still here? I didn't pry. I simply continued my duties. Yet, an undeniable pull tugged at me, a feeling that this was a place where healing was yet to begin, and in his eyes, when they met mine, there was a silent plea for something more. In the quiet, hesitant moments of our interactions, I sensed a flicker of openness in him, as if the door to his heart might not be entirely bolted shut. I kept our relationship strictly professional. I had to. Complications were a luxury I couldn't afford. Yet being in that house awakened something within me that had been dormant for months, a sense of purpose. It transcended the mundane tasks of dusting shelves or folding blankets. It was about being acknowledged even in the subtlest of gestures. For someone who had felt invisible in her own life for so long, this was profound. So I came. I worked with diligence, and in the silence of my heart, I pondered the possibilities what might unfold if two souls, each fractured in their own unique way, continued to intersect within these walls that seemed to yearn for change. Little did I know this question was soon to be answered, and with it, the very fabric of our reality would shift. It began with a simple query. "Would you mind helping me with something upstairs?" Daniel asked one afternoon, his voice unusually gentle. I paused, caught off guard. He had never before invited me to the upper realms of his home. A moment of hesitation gripped me. Was this part of my job or something more? Yet the tentative look in his eyes, devoid of any demand, prompted me to nod. "Of course," I replied. As we ascended the grand staircase, the atmosphere transformed. The upstairs hallway was bathed in warm light, adorned with family portraits, lined with shelves of books, and scented with the subtle aroma of cedar. Unlike the sterile downstairs, this area felt truly lived and authentic. He guided me to a room at the end of the hall, his study, he explained, not the one he used for work downstairs. This space was rich with character and antique desk books piled high, a well-worn leather chair, and a large window that offered a view of the world outside. Here, in this sanctuary of his personal space, something was about to change. Amidst the serene hush of a backyard, an atmosphere thick with the weight of time enveloped us. Papers were strewn across every conceivable surface, and old photo albums lay half open, their pages dusted with the remnants of yesteryears. "I've been meaning to organize this for years," he confessed, his hand rubbing the nape of his neck, in a gesture of both embarrassment and resolve. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. The silence that followed was not uncomfortable, but rather pregnant with understanding. I knew more than I let on, and as I began to sort through the chaos, he joined me, sifting through papers and occasionally sharing fragments of his past. "Look at this," he said, his voice softening as he held up a vintage fountain pen. "That was my father's. He used it every day until the ink ran dry." Our hands brushed against a collection of old postcards, letters, and keepsakes, each item sparking a memory. He smiled at some, sighed at others. I didn't need to cry. He offered slices of his life freely. His passion for classical music, his years abroad, the house he bought with someone he believed he'd grow old with, these stories unfolded like petals in the spring. There was no judgment, just two souls sorting through the archives of existence, one box at a time. From that day forward, the upstairs of his home became less forbidden. He'd invite me to assist with minor tasks, reorganizing books, dusting off shelves, finding a place for keepsakes he couldn't bear to part with. With each visit, our conversation deepened. We spoke of trivialities like the weather, profound thoughts on life, and the occasional raw confession of pain. He told me about Emily. She'd been gone 3 years, taken by cancer's swift and merciless hand. Yet when he spoke of her, it was with a reverence that spoke of peace made with loss, but not with the silence it left in its wake. "What is it like?" I found myself wondering aloud. To lose someone so integral to your life? I too began to open up, sharing not the painful specifics, but enough to convey the essence of my own journey. I spoke of how I had lost more than just a marriage, of how I was piecing together my life from fragments, how daunting it was to remain steadfast when no one else was watching. He listened, his eyes reflecting a kinship born not from pity, but from shared human experience. He listened with an attentiveness that is seldom seen in today's fast-paced world, his ears open, his heart receptive. Not a single time did he cut in or attempt to mend my words. He simply allowed me to unfold my thoughts at my own pace, The once clear lines that separated us as employer and employee, man and woman, began to dissolve. In the late afternoons, he would offer tea, and we would share moments of quiet before I departed. The silence between us lost its weight, becoming instead a canvas for comfort and recognition. There were shared smiles, gentle laughter, and tales that lingered in the air long after I stepped outside. One evening, as I prepared to leave, he escorted me to the door. "You've brought life back to this place," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't realize how much I needed that. His words wrapped around my heart, leaving a warmth that was both unexpected and profound. It wasn't the love story of sweeping declarations or secret vows. It was subtler, a bond weaving through the smallest fissures of our daily interactions, a solace we acknowledged but left unnamed. And though no words of affection were spoken, no actions taken, there was an undeniable shift, a change I could not overlook. The way he looked at me, not just as someone performing a job, but as someone whose presence was essential, made me ponder if healing might sometimes masquerade as a new beginning. Yet I was cautious, reminding myself not to overinterpret these signs. I was there to work to rebuild, not to lose myself to a man whose heart bore the scars of past battles. But no matter how often I cautioned myself, there was something growing between us, something tender, patient, and genuine. Something I wasn't certain I was prepared for. But perhaps, just perhaps, it was precisely what I needed. It was, on that fateful Thursday evening, the world seemed to tilt on its axis. The sky had draped itself in shades of somber gray throughout the day, and as I was wrapping up in the kitchen, the gentle patter of rain began to tap a rhythmic dance against the windows. Just as I was about to slip into my coat, Daniel's silhouette framed the doorway. "The storm's picking up," he observed, gesturing towards the increasingly wild wind outside. "Would you mind staying for dinner just until it calms down?" His voice carried a warmth that made refusal feel like a betrayal. With a slow nod, I set my bag down, surrendering to the unexpected turn of the evening. That night, the house seemed to exhale, embracing us in its quietude. We gathered around the modest kitchen table, where nothing was extravagant, just leftover pasta, a dusty bottle of wine unearthed from years past, and a conversation that flowed effortlessly. Daniel's questions pierced through the usual trivialities. He didn't ask about mundane tasks or the upkeep of the house. Instead, he delved into the depths of my soul. What did I cherish? What did I long for? What fears kept me awake at night? I responded with a blend of caution and sincerity, each word a step closer to vulnerability. And then I turned the spotlight on him, inquiring about the piano that stood silent in the corner. I had passed it countless times, but it had never uttered a sound in my presence. His smile was tinged with sorrow as he shared, "I haven't played since Emily left us." He pointed to the velvet bench, his voice a mere whisper. "She used to sit right there. She said it made the house feel alive." After dinner, with a hopeful look, he asked if I'd like to hear him play. I could only nod, my voice trapped by emotion. He approached the piano with a reverence, his fingers grazing the keys, before coaxing from them a melody both haunting and tender, imbued with a depth of feeling I could scarcely fathom. A lump formed in my throat, tears betraying my composure, silent and unnoticed until the cold touch of them on my cheeks. When the last note lingered in the air, he turned his eyes, searching mine, leaving me to wonder, what secrets did this house this night hold? His gaze pierced through me, not with the sting of pity, but with an unspoken depth. It was a look of understanding, of empathy, a silent acknowledgement that we both bore burdens, unspoken, unnamed. That night, its memory clung to me like a second skin. In the days that followed, my mind often wandered back to his hands deftly caressing the piano keys, the melancholy that danced in his smile, and the way his eyes seemed to see me not as a mere specter drifting through his life, but as someone significant. I began to interrogate my own heart. Was I starting to feel something? And if I was, did that feeling betray the promises I had made to myself? Promises of healing, of standing alone, of not needing another soul to complete me. Then life threw a curveball. A friend had linked me with an opportunity at a real estate firm, better pay, benefits, stability. On paper, it was the dream job I had been yearning for. I kept this news to myself initially, planning to wrap up the month, then make a clean break. No strings, no complications. But when emotions are woven into the tapestry of life, nothing is ever straightforward. He learned of my plans through the grapevine, a mutual acquaintance, perhaps. That day, his demeanor shifted. The warmth that once enveloped his words was now replaced by a formal, distant politeness as cold as a wall of ice. I attempted an explanation, but he dismissed it with a curt, "Of course you should take it. It's a great opportunity." I nodded, yet the pain was palpable, not for the job, but for the way he looked at me. It felt as if the foundation we had been building was crumbling, leaving nothing but dust. The house, once filled with the warmth of our interactions, now felt stark and silent. I continued my duties, but the connection we shared had dwindled to a fragile thread. I questioned my own perceptions. Had I perhaps misread kindness for something more, mistaken familiarity for a deeper intimacy? The doubt lingered heavy as the unshed tears in my eyes. Out into the cool embrace of the morning air, a pang of longing seized my heart. Oh, how I wished for a different ending. Was this truly the end of our shared chapter? Or could there still be an unwritten verse, a hidden stanza in our story? The rooms, now silent, whispered their farewells as I moved through them one last time. Each creak of the floor, each echo of my footsteps seemed to plead for one more moment, one more chance. Why must goodbyes be so final? I wondered aloud, my voice barely a whisper lost amidst the vastness of the empty house. In the quietude, I had hoped for a sign, a gesture from him, something to tether me to this place, to us. Yet the walls remained impassive, the silence unbroken. Still, a flicker of hope danced within me, a tiny flame refusing to be snuffed out. Could it be? I thought, my heart racing at the possibility that our story might not be concluded, that perhaps it was merely on pause, waiting for a courageous act to resume its melody. As the final moments ticked away, my fingers lingered on the door handle, reluctant to let go. The house, with all its memories, had become a part of me, each room, a chapter of our time together. I had entered as a stranger, driven by necessity, but I was departing with a heart full of unexpected attachments. With a deep breath, I stepped outside the door, closing softly behind me, a gentle but firm punctuation to my time here. No, there were no grand gestures, no last-minute declarations, just a quiet, reflective departure. I left the note, my words of gratitude mingling with the air, hoping they would find him, hoping they would convey what my presence could not. As I walked away, the house stood still, a silent sentinel of our past, possibly, hopefully, not our final goodbye. As I made my way out, his voice, laden with a poignant mix of surprise and sadness, reached me from behind. "You were going to leave without even a goodbye." I turned, my heart skipping a beat at the sight of him, his hair disheveled, his face a canvas of unreadable emotions. He took a step closer, and for a moment, the world held its breath with us. His voice, soft, yet carrying the weight of unsaid words, broke the silence. "I should have spoken up sooner. I didn't want you to stay out of obligation. My chest constricted at his confession, the air around us thick with the tension of what might have been. I'm not leaving because of you. I managed to say, my voice a whisper of vulnerability. I thought you didn't want me to stay. He exhaled a sound that seemed to release years of pent-up emotion. I didn't know how to ask, he murmured, his eyes meeting mine with a newfound honesty. I've spent so long guarding myself from loss that I didn't realize I'd already let someone in. There it was, the truth laid bare between us, weeks of circling, finally coming to a head. The silence that followed wasn't oppressive. It was ripe with the promise of new beginnings. He moved closer, his steps cautious, as if still unsure of my reaction. I don't want you to go, he confessed, his voice a blend of hope and fear. Not unless it's truly what you desire. I looked at him, this man who had slowly woven himself into the fabric of my daily life, and felt my resolve weaken. I do want more for myself, I said, steadying my voice, but I also crave honesty, genuine connection, and no barriers. He nodded, his eyes reflecting a dawning understanding. Then let's forge something real, he suggested, his tone gentle yet firm. No expectations, just something true together. In that moment, under the soft glow of the old house's lights, I felt truly seen, not as a mere worker or someone merely existing, but as a woman deserving of love and belonging. We didn't rush into an embrace. Instead, we stood there, letting the quiet speak volumes. As the door to the house closed behind us, years of pent-up pain, hesitation, and fear began to dissolve, as if they were merely fleeting shadows. I agreed to embrace the new job, yet chose to stay rooted in the town, not ready to sever ties completely. But the farewell was not merely an end. It was an opening, a tender invitation. He didn't just bid me goodbye. He extended an offer to start anew. Would you come for dinner next week? He asked, a simple query that carried the weight of a new chapter for us, just two souls rediscovering each other. My affirmative response was a bold step into vulnerability, the bravest I'd felt in years. From that moment, our lives intertwined with a gentle unfolding. Conversations flowed, time was spent in each other's company, and simple yet profound moments were shared, each one more significant than any grand declaration could ever be. There was no haste, no perfection, but there was authenticity. He returned to the piano, coaxing melodies from its keys while I picked up my paintbrush, my creative spirit awakened from a long slumber since the divorce. We nurtured each other's growth, provided solace on the difficult days, and filled our lives with laughter more than I ever thought possible. Isn't it true that love doesn't always strike like lightning? Often it creeps in when you least anticipate it, through the mundane act of cleaning a house, through shared sorrow, or over a meal during a rainy evening. And if fortune smiles upon you, it lingers not to mend you, but to journey with you as you navigate your path. This life I now lead wasn't the one I envisioned when I set out to reconstruct my world. The job I took wasn't the one I dreamed of, but within the walls of that unexpected house, I unearthed treasures far greater than any salary could offer. I found connection, I found hope, and I found the quiet, tender beginnings of love. And this time, I opened my heart to let it flourish. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Your support means the world. Please share your thoughts in the comments of this video if it resonated with you. Share it with those who might need a little hope, and consider subscribing for more stories from the heart. Remember, life's most profound moments often come from the most unexpected places.